Volkoski in deep. Nurse out back in front for Kellian. He scores! And that one is history! Arthur Kellian, it's point number 248 on his 44th goal of the season. It's 1-1 and Arthur Kellian stands alone. King Arthur reigns on the throne as he is now the all-time franchise leading scorer for the Hamilton Bulldogs.
Laser pass back to Kelly at the top on the left. Now to the middle of the line, Stales scores! Oh, it was a bullet! Nathan Stales from the middle of the line, channels Ben Gleason, goes top corner, it's 2-1 Bulldogs.
It's Mishak the other way, right wing side, dragging around Gleason to the front of the net. Oh, what a scintillating goal that was! Turning two Sioux defenders inside out. It's 3-1 Bulldogs on his 11th of the year. That was marvelous. Hayes up ahead to Bertuzzi, short breakaway. Bertuzzi to his backhand, 5-hole scores! Tag Bertuzzi! He got the new lumber and he buried it! Bertuzzi picks up his 25th of the year. Bulldogs are back within one with 11:03 to go. Oh, he scoops and scored! Arthur Kellian! Are you kidding me? Kellian goes full lacrosse move. He channeled Matt Strome and tucked it over Artur Silovs. It's a 5-4 Bulldog lead on one of the most skillful plays you'll ever see. And Bertuzzi back ahead, goes through two. Bertuzzi on the forehand. Oh my goodness gracious, what a goal! Tag Bertuzzi wanders through two, handles it with one hand on the backhand, and tucks it around Brendan Bonello. It's a tie hockey game on an incredible individual effort.
Going for another edition of OHL Voices by Hamilton Bulldogs play-by-play voice Reed Duthie. Reed's a man who knows how to make a hockey game come alive and is one of many interests. Having followed you on Twitter, I know you like wrestling, UFC. You're a diehard Boston Bruins fan, just like me, so we have that in common. And you've certainly got a diverse range of subjects you enjoy following, in addition to the Bulldogs. Reed, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, no, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. We were talking a little bit before we got started, and you talk about always enjoying talking hockey, and that certainly sums me up. And with the way the season ended and everything kind of being on pause, it's been a little bit unfortunate. Not a lot of live hockey to talk about, so my Twitter's been more filled with the wrestling and the MMA stuff, but it's great to get back to thinking about the team and thinking about the game.
You're a born and bred Hamilton boy. You followed the Bulldogs throughout your childhood. You even called some AHL games back in the day, and you've been calling Dogs games in the OHL since day one in the 2015-16 season. Tell us about the journey. I'm sure that's been a highlight of your life, being able to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Grew up in Hamilton, went to school all the way along in Hamilton, McMaster Mohawk College guy. Grew up originally with the Hamilton Canucks. Still have a couple of the old pucks of theirs. And then when the Hamilton Bulldogs came in originally with the Edmonton Oilers, obviously a fan of them, right through the affiliation with the Montreal Canadiens, which at times as a Bruins fan was a little bit tough because you'd fall in love with some of the guys that were Habs prospects and then see them burn you when they get to the NHL. But it was all right. We made it work. And my journey was funny, actually, because I started when I was at Mohawk College as a volunteer doing the AHL Bulldogs, the 08-09 season. And essentially I set up my own booth, so I had to learn how to do all the technical aspects of it going in. And then at the end of the night, I would tear it down so I could get there at 2 o'clock and get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I loved every second of it. Wouldn't have traded that experience for the world. I got lucky that somebody I was working with at the time, his name was Dave, sent my stuff to Cable 14, the local station here that does hockey and football and everything else under the sun. And at that point, they gave me an opportunity. And then it was a process of building back up. I went and called the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League for several years, along with the Allen Cup League, did the Allen Cup Tournament, Sutherland Cups, SO Cup. And then when of course, the AHL Bulldogs as well did a couple of games at the end of seasons against the Manitoba Moose. And then when the OHL Bulldogs came in, they asked me if I was interested in stepping in to do that. And that answer took me about a quarter of a second. And since then, I've been with the Hamilton Bulldogs, and I've loved every second of the ride.
I know you've alternated a little bit between radio and television. You're currently doing all the games on the radio now. Do you have a preference, and do you find that changes your approach to calling a game in any significant way?
No, because I was always kind of told that I called games like a radio guy even when I was on television, because I'm very descriptive when I call games. So the changeover wasn't as difficult. The one thing that kind of threw me off was I'd never really gone since I was a volunteer in 08-09 for any significant length of time calling games solo. And on the road this year, that's one thing that I had to get used to. And you really learn to appreciate the guys that have done it solo for a long time, because some of those breaks, you've got to find the interesting stats, the interesting stories to be able to come up with and keep the listener engaged. And I hope I did a good enough job this year, and I'm expecting to be better next year. But no real preference for me. I mean, I enjoy both mediums. Radio is a lot of fun because you are the narrator. You are the voice. You're telling the story. TV, everyone can see what's going on, which is a whole lot of fun as well to be able to describe that. But when you're the voice that has to bring all the action, that's something unique, and that's something that I really, really got into this year.
You spoke a little bit just prior to the recording about who inspired you as a kid to get into broadcasting and play-by-play. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and maybe there's a couple of names kind of along the way growing up that really kind of spoke into the experience for you.
Oh, absolutely. The original one, of course, and being a Bruins fan yourself will remember him well, was Fred Cusick. TV 38 and NESN fame. He was the guy when I was a kid growing up and watching games with my dad that we would hear every time that legendary TV 38 music would start up for the Bruins, and you'd hear his voice next, and Johnny Pearson and Derek Sanderson with him. And it was just the way he called the game that he could make it just so much better just by being on the call, that he knew the perfect thing to say at the perfect time. And go back and watch highlights of him calling Ray Bork's goals or calling Bobby Orr. He just had that knack of saying the right thing at exactly the right time. It was all experience, but he was so good at it. And I remember thinking, even as a young kid, I want to make people feel the way that he makes me feel watching my favorite team play. And that's something that I've always kind of carried along. And then, I mean, I don't think you can be a Canadian and not like Chris Cuthbert. I go back to the 93 playoffs when David Volek scored for the Islanders, and there'll be a new Stanley Cup champion in 1993. And
Here they come, 2-on-1. Volek shoots, scores! David Volek, Islanders! And there'll be a new Stanley Cup champion in 1993.
That call has always stuck with me. Again, just one of those guys, perfect timing at the perfect moment. And then the guy that I've been compared to a lot, and I know some people mean it as a compliment, and I'm sure some people don't, is Jack Edwards. Jack Edwards has had a big influence on me. I love the way he calls a game because he puts so much research and so much effort into it. He's always excited, and he calls the game so well. Like, you can tell, no matter if you're paying full attention to the game or whether you're kind of doing it with background noise, you can always tell where the puck is, what's going on, just by listening to Jack Edwards' voice. So those are three names that have been big influences on me.
Interesting. Having been around for the 5 years of Bulldogs hockey in the OHL now, I have to think the 2018 championship is probably one of your best hockey memories, just watching that ride and really seeing how that team came together, obviously with the core already in place of Strome and Entwistle and Bitton and Lemke and so on. And then just how, Steve Staios, another Hamilton guy, brought in some of those big names along the way, Ryan Moore and Nick Camano and Riley Stillman, and just really how that team came together. Got to mention Robert Thomas too. Probably have some really good memories of that season.
Oh, absolutely. And what a ride that was. And you're right. I mean, the season started off and the team was coming off that Game 7 loss to Kingston. But you felt that there was some revenge in the minds. And they started off the season so well. And then it started. It was Ryan Moore and Nick Camano in a double at first. And I remember getting to the arena the first night that Camano and Moore were going to play. And I looked at Troy Islikar, my longtime partner, and I said, I think we're about to do something really special. And those guys come in and they made the team so much better. And then you get to Christmas and you hear Riley Stillman. Well, there's a guy that, my favorite call working with him was it's not fair when the brick wall can move. I mean, that guy could fly around the ice and just punish the opposition. And if Robert Thomas doesn't win the MVP of the playoffs in 2018, Riley Stillman might have. He was probably the best defenseman in the OHL that year. And as he comes in, and then you start to hear the rumors of Robert Thomas. And it's, well, can we really get the best player in the league? And sure enough, Steve Staios finds a way, and he shows up. And then to cap it all off, Nick Mattinen arrives just after. You watch that team, you go back and look at it. Cade Landry, who set the single-season record for Bulldogs points by a defenseman, he did it the next season, was the number 7 on that team. If Cade Landry is your number 7 defenseman, you have an incredible hockey team. And that team, 4 lines, they could roll them in the playoffs. Arthur Kaliyev was a rookie. He had 31 regular season goals. He was playing on the 4th line in the playoffs. That's how deep this team was. And just going through that and seeing the revenge against Kingston in the conference final, and Connor Walters, of all people, scoring the series-winning goal for us to send us to the OHL championship was amazing. But I could go back through so many moments in that series. And one that the OHL highlighted earlier on this spring was Robert Thomas taking the pass from Riley Stillman, going through his feet, back to his forehand to find Brandon Sagen and scoring. And you just watched moments like that, and you had to remember you were calling the game, but it was pretty easy to realize these guys are about to do something special for the city of Hamilton.
Yeah, definitely a character group of guys, and it was really cool to see how the city really rallied around that team. You get a big crowd in that building, they can get pretty loud. So especially during that series with Sault Ste. Marie, things got pretty intense in there. This past season, though, I mean, 2 years removed from a championship, I guess it was a little bit of what you might have expected, especially with, only about 3 or 4 holdovers from that 2018 roster remaining with the team this year. Finished a few games under 500 and I believe lost the last 6 or something, kind of ended on a low note, but a lot of twists and turns along the way, really. I mean, losing who at the break may have been the most dominant offensive player in the league in Jan Yannick, and then, obviously a coaching change later in the year. Sort of a lot to talk about for the season that was, but I'm sure along the way you probably saw a few names step up and establish themselves at the next level.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the names that I immediately jumps to mind is Tag Bertuzzi, who really, this was the first time in 3 years in the Ontario Hockey League that he played a full, let's call it a full season because of all the things that sort of jumped in the end of the season getting knocked out for him. But 25 goals in his first real full campaign with consistent ice time. This is a guy who could easily score 40 goals next year. You see why he was the number 2 overall pick with the Guelph Storm. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got the power forward style. You can see he's almost blended his dad's game with his old line mate Mark Naslin's game. And he's a lot of fun to watch when he gets the puck on his stick. So he's one. Logan Morrison is another who's just a spectacular thinker. He's got a supercomputer between his ears, and up and down the ice, he can just make things happen. Avery Hayes is going to be a special talent. The 2 16-year-olds that really made impact for us this year, Ryan Winterton can put the puck through the eye of a thimble. He's got an incredible wrist shot. Lawson Shirk is going to be a very underrated player, but he's going to be the full, complete 200-foot center that you can have in any situation, is going to be the pace setter for the team, and is going to put up offensive numbers to go along with it. He may not get his due until right at the end of his OHL career, but you're going to see a player develop over time that's going to be really special. I think the problem for the Bulldogs this year was, and I don't want to make it sound like an excuse because it's not. You got to play the games. But there was a lot of bad luck when it came to injuries and illness with the team. Whether it was Tag Bertuzzi at one point was down injured, Nathan Staios missed a few games, and he was electric when he was in the lineup. Arthur Kaliyev and Jan Yannick going to the World Juniors, and then you're expecting to get both of them back. And the Bulldogs kept their heads above water without their 2 leading scorers, and then to not have Yannick return, that was absolutely gutting. And one that I think goes under the radar is Isaac Nurse pretty much missed the first half of the season. So if you take a Bulldogs team and say Jan Mysak arrives in October and not the middle of January, and you have a full season, even with the World Junior break, with Mysak, Yannick, a healthy Nurse, Avery Hayes doesn't come down with an illness in the second half of the season, healthy Bertuzzi, healthy Staios. I mean, this team could have been a lot better than 7th in the Eastern Conference, and there was a real feeling amongst the team that they were just about to turn a corner as this all went down, and they really felt like they could be an upset team in the first round, if not further, and make some noise. So the confidence was always there, and I think that is, with so many players returning next year, going to be what the key is. They're going to add talent, but all these guys have that experience now, the up and down ride. They know how to even it out, and all those games under their belts, it's only going to be better off for the Bulldogs.
You've had the opportunity to watch Arthur Kellian play for 3 years now, and this is a player who scored 31 goals as a 16-year-old. But having seen him in the following 2 seasons, I'm sure there's other areas of his game that maybe you've seen him improve in. I mean, obviously the Americans, USA Hockey, saw enough in him in other parts of his game to include him on their World Junior roster. And when you're playing on the big ice, you have to be more than just a goal scorer. What is it about Arthur that's been special over the span of 3 seasons?
Well, I think you nailed it when you talked about the way the Americans saw him, USA Hockey saw him, because he opened the tournament at the World Juniors as their 13th forward, and by the end was their leading goal scorer. It's not a coincidence why. Arthur Kellian works hard, and I think some people don't realize how hard he works, but he does. You got to watch him consistently to understand the way that he works. He is so intelligent when it comes to the puck, and it's not just – and people say, well, yeah, of course he's got great puck skills, but I don't mean it when he just has the puck on his stick. He has this innate ability to understand where the puck is going to be before it gets there. It's why he became a really good penalty killer for the Bulldogs this season. And when he and Jan Jeník were on the ice killing penalties together, he and Jan Mysak, they had a ton of shorthanded opportunities and a lot of shorthanded goals because Kellian can read and understand the play. He has improved so much in his play away from the puck and his play tracking the puck. That's what's made the biggest difference for him. We always knew he was going to light the lamp at an incredible pace. You saw that right away as a 16-year-old. But he's rounded out the game. He's a little bit more physical, not overly that he's going to throw a big hit, but a lot like a Jaromir Jagr understands how to shield the puck and throw his shoulder and throw his body in to be able to control and get it away from players. And he's probably the best player I've seen at the junior level in terms of finding dead ice. And that is when he's at his most dangerous, because he'll sort of glide around in the offensive zone looking for that space. And as soon as he slides into it, you give him somebody like Jeník or Mysak who can find him with the puck. Once that puck is on its way to Arthur Kellian, it's already over. It's a one-timer that's going into the back of the net. Or now he's figured out to take something off it as a slap pass back across the front. It makes him doubly dangerous. But I think it's that growth away from the puck and tracking the puck that has made him so much more than just a goal scorer. Now he's becoming that complete player. I said it during the draft. The Kings absolutely stole him in the second round. He should have been probably a top 10 to top 15 pick. And I just think the development of the defensive game, people didn't see it until the year after the draft. And I know from hearing scouts this year, there were a lot of people going, oh, no, we're going to have to answer for this one.
That's all part of the fun, isn't it?
Absolutely.
One part of the depth chart that we haven't really touched on, and I think it's an intriguing one for the Bulldogs next season. A bit of a 1A and 1B in Roy and Costantini in the crease, I think, and both those guys played similar amounts this year. And you also throw in Mateo Drobak in the pipeline as a guy who's caught the attention of Hockey Canada, being invited to the U18 camp this summer. You have to think it's going to be pretty competitive in camp from the outset to start next season. And really, 3 names that are probably worthy of playing time in this league, you know. So sort of an interesting scenario and maybe a good problem to have if you're Steve Staios and the Bulldogs staff.
That's the great thing of what the Bulldogs staff, the scouts, Steve Staios, Ian Mahar, who doesn't get enough credit, our assistant general manager, who's a brilliant hockey guy. They have set the Bulldogs up with this incredible pipeline of talent. If you look at every position on the roster right now, there's too many talented players for how many you can have on the ice at any one time. So it's a problem, but it's a great problem to have because camp is going to be crazy competitive, and you nailed it in net. Zachary Roy is a lot of fun to watch because he's got a bit of a Tim Thomas influence to him. He's a shorter guy, but he absolutely flies around the net, and he makes the spectacular look simple. We've seen him make saves with cartwheels, by using the paddle of his stick, rolling over in the crease. If he can stop it, he will find a way to get something on it. And then Marco Cosentini, who has that Patrick Waugh, Tuukka Rask, 6'2", 6'3" frame, where he's got the incredible reflexes, the butterfly style of goaltender. And really for him, he was just young. He was an OHL rookie last year. He's going to even out a lot of those ups and downs that he had. And then you're right, you've got that 1A, 1B where Roy has come along quickly. Cause is going to be that good. And then you throw Mateo Droback into the mix, who is built like a linebacker. When you see him without his equipment on, I thought he was 22. I thought this was a goalie coach we were bringing in or something, because he does not look junior age. He's built like a tank, and he just stops pucks. I saw him play junior B this year. He just soaks up pucks. So the Bulldogs have a great problem, but the camp race this year, I can't wait to get there and watch those three just give it in the crease, because you can only – well, you can carry three, but you can only dress two at any one time. So who are those two going to be? And then, I mean, if one guy gets left out, can you send him to an OJ team? Like, there's so many things that come into play here. But, again, great problem for the Bulldogs. Three spectacular goalies that all should deserve OHL time, I would think.
Well, I mentioned, Vince Lace dismissed towards the end of last season. So, of course, Steve Staios, you'd have to assume a coaching search is in motion. But he's also been busy with a couple other moves recently, bringing in Colton Kammerer, of course, and Artem Grushnikov being selected in the import draft, Jorian Donovan coming in the first round of the OHL priority selection. Some moves on the back end, and maybe a couple moves that may have opened up a little bit of ice for a couple of those young names.
Absolutely. And I look at that defense now, and you see the balance that the Bulldogs were trying to achieve between guys that are really spectacularly talented offensively and guys that are really talented defensively. Nathan Staios now has his – and I'll use our Bruins. If you've got Torrey Krug and Nathan Staios, you've now got Brandon Carlo and Colton Kammerer. I think they're going to be a really good pair together. Artem Grushnikov has the potential to be a stud. And this kid, there's nothing he can't do. He's a great skater for his size. He hits, he defends, he's really intelligent. And you figure if he's a lefty and you have a righty in Jake Gravel, that could be a really good pair. Gravel can get up and down the ice, and he's going to be a big-time leader for the Bulldogs. And then you look at all the other guys that come into play. Chandler Romeo is a monster. He's going to be 17 years old and 6'5", and a really talented player in his own right. Peyton Veccio, who was excellent for us last year, played most of the season with Cade Landry. Gavin White, who is so talented, and just the numbers didn't allow him to get into the lineup all that often. Frank Jenkins is still there. You just go down this list of talented defensemen that the Bulldogs have their hands on, and you could have a whole list of possibilities as to how you're going to line these guys up. Again, it's a problem in a way, but it's a great problem to have, because the coaching staff is going to have this all at their fingers to be able to figure out how we want to align this defense, and that can only be a good thing for the Bulldogs. And at the same time, as much as it stings to lose guys and good guys like Cameron Saprika and Michael Renwick, the Bulldogs have also started to they really have reloaded that draft cabinet as well. So they've accomplished a number of things all in one offseason, and the team's only going to be better for it coming out of it. So really, it's a tip of the cap to everything that Steve Staios and the front office have done.
I think you've given us a pretty good glimpse in the next season. You mentioned Bertuzzi and Winterton and Hayes and Morrison and some of those guys who are really going to be pivotal heading into next season. Certainly a lot to look forward to in a team, as you mentioned, just through the drafting and development, that there really has a lot of options in front of it, and some interesting decisions to be made come training camp whenever that happens. Absolutely. And the one guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing in training camp is Jorian Donovan, because all the reports on this kid say that he could be a top-end defenseman. He's got the bloodlines. His dad was a long-time NHLer. He's got the skills. He dominated in a U18 league as a 15-year-old, which I don't think can go undercounted, because
That is not an easy league to play in as an underage player. So he's already used to going up against bigger, faster, stronger. His transition may not be as bad as some other players have because he's already used to that. Not at the OHL level, but he's at least gotten a taste of what it's like to go up against bigger, faster, stronger. So that's going to be big for Jory and Donovan. And when you get to camp and you see the young guys, whether they're 03s and 04s, battling with the incredible crop of 01s that the Bulldogs still have, and an 02 mix that 8 players from the 2002 birth class that they got in that draft have already suited up for at least a game with the Bulldogs. Then add in Gavin White and Jan Mishak out of the U18 and the import draft. They've done an incredible job building depth into this team. It's just all about bringing it together at camp and picking the best 23, 24 names to carry on through the season.
Well, Reed, we're into July, so no sense in us sitting in front of the computer any longer here. Thanks for the chat. I think you've really given fans a lot to look forward to heading into next season, and look forward to seeing you in the rinks and behind the microphone once again very soon. Thanks a lot.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much. And anytime you want, come on in. I'm always happy to have you around the rink. And maybe after one game this year, we can go have a pop together.
Excellent. Take care.
You too. Thanks very much.